All right, so I guess, yeah, we're going to be doing a good old analysis here. And let's get some music rolling. Yeah, we'll be doing a full analysis, just kind of giving my thoughts. Is this character going to be worth it? I guess the question of it being worth it is also just kind of skewed immediately because of this being an incredibly accessible character, but also just, we'll rate the kit, we'll see what actually sounds good about it, what I have concerns over, and we'll just try to get a good idea of what we're working with by the end of this. We're building an NCS playlist of songs that I actually genuinely enjoy, but I think we'll stick with the safe stuff for today. Alright. We've got... I tend to take these pages with a grain of salt, but I do think there's some value in seeing what CG's intent is with the character, right? We can kind of judge whether they hit that mark, or if the character is just clearly going to go in some, off direction that CG doesn't seem to have had in mind. So right off the bat, immediately, I'd like to point out, I've been saying for a while now, the Mandalorian Beskar armor was never going to be a bounty hunter lead, and I am glad to have been proven right there. Even though, honestly, I probably would have enjoyed him being a bounty hunter. Just the way the show plays out, him not having that tag just kind of checks out to me. Also, I guess if we look at the art, this is like mid-season 1. Dude, doesn't have jetpack, doesn't have any of the season 2 related stuff. So I guess if we're wondering if this could lead to something else, and I guess CG is trying to not have him be the final version. I guess this isn't actually technically the final version still, which is weird. It looks like we do have... I was kind of expecting this to happen, the pod. I assume that the pod is going to be non-targetable, not a part of combat. Kind of just the child hanging out on the side. But yeah, we do have a brand new schedule lead, and this was pretty essential, I think. This was just something the game has kind of been waiting for a while now. We've gotten a lot of scoundrels, right? In the last 2 years alone. And you look at scoundrel leads, and you look at scoundrel fanaticists, loyalists, scoundrel enjoyers, and you got people over there trying to talk themselves into hey, Clone Wars Chewie lead actually kind of not bad. And it's okay. But they could still do, Kira's okay. Kira's still, on the more passive side of things, lead-wise, which I think is probably the worst thing you could say about it. This is a strong initial sell. This has my attention. This has my curiosity and my attention. Because there are a lot of scoundrels. They're, straight up the biggest faction, and they haven't had a good excuse to use them yet in this game, right? For the most part. Kira Nest still slaps. I will still gladly use that in Grand Arena. But, as a team... where you're putting them together? No, you're putting Han Chewie in CLS. You're putting L3 as a still really respectable tank, but she's just getting chucked into Rey. Just yeah, go get him, champ. So, yeah. Curious right off the bat that CG suggests IG-11 without Queel. That's funny to me, but who knows? We don't know what's in store yet. Effectively limiting. I don't really care about the rest of this. Mostly, I just want to highlight Scoundrel lead. The stakes are high already, because that faction has been waiting for this man. Assumedly, we'll see. This basic is setting up, I think, what might just continue to be a common trend here. So right off the bat, I want to point out that this damage over time does not apply before the damage. I feel like I need to give a little bit of context here. Have I read the kit? I have. This isn't going to be OMG reacts. I have taken a look before we went live. And I guess in saying that I have looked at the kit, folks, we got to establish some context here, because the context is going to be incredibly important talking about the rest of this. So for those of you who don't know, actually, let me swing on. It's hilarious. I didn't actually set this up, by the way. I promise you I did not. I would just happen to be here, but it's incredibly appropriate. We got a man who has been bugged for a while now and did not really. It's a crazy bug. There just wasn't really a reason for it to need to be fixed, and we might be approaching that moment. So I could be incorrect on this. I always forget like the exact wording on this, but so we're talking about Canderous here. We are reading, whenever an enemy with a damage over time effect is damaged by an attack, Canderous gains 8% turn meter. Okay, you read that, sounds straightforward enough, right? It's fine. The way I'm pretty sure this actually works is just any time a debuffed enemy is damaged by an attack, it might only still be damage over time, but this is just any source of damage. Anybody else hits them, the main is going to gain turn meter. It's either debuffs or damage over time. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm sure someone in the chat might have confirmation, but yes, it's this dude is potentially going to be nuts here. And we'll get to why more in a second. This seems to be clearly teeing up for Canderous. And especially in context of the bug, which, like, there have been other effects that just, like, Pyatt released, right? Like, Pyatt didn't give Imp Trooper his turn meter for the Emperor's Trap buff. And I looked at that like, man, that's such a crazy amount of turn meter. There's no way CG's gonna, like, get that going in the game. Now, this was a case of it technically shouldn't be working, and they fixed it so that was. This is a case of this should not be working this way, but it sounds like I'd be curious to see if CG actually comes in and fixes it, because yeah, I mean, this isn't openly endorsing Go Gear Canderous immediately, but this is me saying that I'll probably be really curious to see what people like Clash have to say in the upcoming days, because Clash already has Canderous, and you know what? I'll let him be the guinea pig there. But yeah, so we have, you know, a triple hit basic, which he can already provide a lot of turn meter for himself, and then we do have more support for that in Mandalorian's kit that we'll get to momentarily. So yeah, I mean, this basic overall, we just get back on over. This basic is kind of synergetic. They're kind of working, but it's an order that's a little bit clunky, because in context of that bug, you would almost like to see this damage over time applied before dealing damage. But you know what? This also just means that, like, as long as you already have the debuff down, then you're going to give Canderous what he wants anyway. So solid synergy with Canderous there. Not really doing a whole lot else. Like, 1 damage over time was never really, I think, knocking out of the park. Like, if you want to compare that to, like, Gamorrean Guard, who I think does, like, 2 or 3 in 1 basic. We're looking at this for the double hit, mostly. The double hit, and then, of course, as always, we can never see it quite in the text reveals, is the question of damage ratio, base stats, base offense, and how much the ability will be able to use it. You know, maybe it's something that could do respectable damage if they are already debuffed. But otherwise, it's a fairly vanilla basic that looks good in context of Canderous. So, like, let's say this is just my general feelings on it. You know, it's like, it's a double Canderous TM proc with the bug. Otherwise, we really just need, like, this double hit kind of needs to just be kind of walloping someone, I think, for it to do anything. And it's also worth noting, I don't think we deal damage over time twice. I'm pretty sure this is just damage twice, but you only damage over time once. Which, I don't know. I feel like there could have been room for a second dot. Or just, like, basic again, basically. If they were already debuffed. Again, the double DOT not exactly going to be knocking out of the park, but, like, you know, if you're trying to run somebody like Zalbar, somebody, like, the mission doesn't particularly care that much. It's just, there would be some extra support for that faction there. All right. Overall, yeah, I think I feel alright about that rating. It's not that crazy of a ability in itself, but it's a basic. It's I mean, we've had better basics lately. It's fine. It's passable. All right. This is where things start to get spicy. So we have an ability. This is like the closest that we've gotten so far, at the very least, to an ultimate on a non-Galactic Legends character, almost. All right, so we have a setup and execute. This is like a GIF in the kit that transforms between this and the other ability. Let's just dress it down real quick. So basically, we have discipline setup. Wait. The text wasn't changing, right? Because we have Swift Takedown here. So wording's a little bit weird. Okay, so I assume just on ability activate, we gain 1 stack of Whistling Birds for each enemy, so typically 5 to 6, pretty much always. And then we're kind of like most ultimates, like Ray Ultimate, I guess if you will. The next time we take an ability, we're going to be getting the execute. So we have essentially a stacking, almost like a Droidica ult, I want to say. Ignore stealth and taunt, also very nice. And also, this was kind of my first question, is you have to use Swift Takedown next time you use an ability, but you can't assist or counter, so it is just the next time you cycle. I mean, that's basically all there is to say here. We're basically just trying to stack up Whistling Birds, and it says extra damage dealt to enemies before the Whistling Birds payoff just gets us extra stacks up to 20. So, you know, kind of cool. It sets up a precedent. It also makes you happy to have people like Canderous, of course, who are going to be multi-attacking or AoE damaging a whole lot. It's also worth noting that this is specifically saying whenever an enemy takes damage, not whenever you damage an enemy. So there are some niche circumstances, or even stuff like damage over time or thermal detonators. I don't think thermal detonators will really be seen a lot here, but thermal detonators or damage over time will be counted as, or will be respected as counting up your Whistling Birds. So, okay, you know, fair enough. It's basically, it's set up. There isn't really a whole lot to say about it beyond that. I don't even know if there's any points really in rating it beyond... I mean, this really is just press a button to do nothing, but it's entirely just a question of what the payoff is down here. So it's really hard to rate, right? Like, it really depends on, I don't know, I'm not even gonna rate that. We'll leave it alone for now, just because we need to get to Special 3. By the way, seems really weird that they wouldn't just put the payoff right next to it, but I don't know, whatever. We're living our life. So on to the next special, Wonder of the Force. This is Baby Yoda's part of the kit. Fairly spicy. So we have all Scoundrel allies recover 20% protection, remove 20% terminator from allies, as well as Scoundrel allies have their protection equalized. So very, very reminiscent of Hermit Yoda. Except I believe Hermit Yoda is a health equalized with 20% protection, and this is a protection equalized with 20% protection. So kind of a worse strength flows from the Force. But instead of the health healing aspect, the health equalization aspect, you are instead removing 20% terminator from all enemies. Which, you know, okay, fair enough. It can be resisted as well, worth noting. Which could be a problem because I don't know necessarily that you're going to want to spec him for potency. But, I mean, can be evaded at least, which is kind of standard for these types of abilities. Where the spice comes in and it doesn't come in. This is like hype and then like restraint at the same time. Is the Mandalorian Beskar armor and target other Scoundrel ally gain damage immunity for 1 turn. Which I read this and immediately was like thinking of like, oh god, L3 Watt, oh god, like this is so cheesable. This ability starts on cooldown though. And you gain tenacity up on that target as well, but that can be dispelled, so it's like a weird half and half, right? Like, it's better than Droidica because it can't be dispelled. It's only for 1 turn. It's like it's a targetable Django payout, right? It's nice. It's very nice, but this ability starts on cooldown, the cooldown of 4. So it's like a reverse Nihilus Annihilate. It's like a weird like bounty hunter contract almost. Yeah. It's like a weird like self bounty hunter quest in context of the lead. I think it'll feel solid. It could, you know, maybe potentially save a character in like a GAC fight who's like about to die. It just comes in a little bit late. It's weird. It's doing a lot of things at once. And yeah, I don't know. The fact that it starts on cooldown, I think is fair, is fine. That's a long time to wait for somebody who doesn't die for one turn. And 20% TM removal. It's hard to rate. It's doing a lot of things at a really, really weird timing. Nevertheless, we have to try. Of course, we don't know the base speed of the character as well. I hope that they're on the faster end. They kind of need to be. But at the same time, you know, there is... Like, if this wasn't coming in on a 4-turn starting cooldown, there was almost a call that, like, it might be interesting to build them slow. But I don't think that's going to be the case here. So, I mean, overall, this button is doing a lot, right? Is like... If we take the button in itself as, like, how much it's actually doing, I would say, you know, it's a solid swing. You're pumping your team's protection. You're making 2 people on your team completely undamageable for a turn. Tenacity for 2 turns is always nice. But the fact that it starts on cooldown... It's like, how many fights are even decided already by then? Like, it's entirely possible that there will just be a decent chunk of fights where you'll hit this and it's just like... It's adorable. Like, good job. You're doing your best, kid, but also, like, we already mopped up. I mean, all in all, I'm feeling like an 8.5, just on the prospect of, like, if I had this as a button available, I feel pretty good about it. We'll get to... Honestly, we really need to talk about the lead when talking about this. Like, honestly, this almost feels like it should have been split out into 2 abilities. Like, I don't think this first part really needed to be on a cooldown restriction. And, like, the damage immunity, sure, whatever. Like, obviously, CG in no way would ever be able to get away with, like, that being available immediately in a fight. That would just be extremely abusable. But there are a lot of situations where, like, you could really use this as a button. Like, it would be really, really nice to have right now, and you're not going to have that available. But that being said, we'll come back to this 4 cooldown because there is the leader to talk about, and the leader will affect it. So we have the payoff now, which, I mean, this doesn't sound bad. So we have heal immunity on all enemies. That's pretty wild. That's a tool that we don't even see that often. Deal physical damage to them and lose 1 stack of listening birds for each enemy damaged this way. And then here is the spice. Here is, like, we haven't had a good ability like this in a while, and I feel like they have... I love me some conditionality and predictability, and this is, like, Rolo special modernized. With better design, I just really enjoy this. So, for the target, which we can ignore taunt and we can ignore stealth, so... I don't know that he could target Sith Eternal Emperor. I assume Deceived would take priority over it, but basically any other target. Unless they have, like, damage immunity. We get our pick of the litter. We deal true damage for each stack of Whistling Birds. I assume this means that we're capped at 15. If the max stack is 20, and we're consuming 5 per enemy hit, then this essentially means that we have 15 ammo left in the chamber, potentially left for the single target. True damage for each stack, so very, very similar allegory. Think about Jordy can nuke here. Very, very similar mechanic. We don't know, of course, how the damage is going to scale, how much each tick of true damage is going to do, and that's kind of the one question is how... Like, how much reach does this have? Are we talking, like, potentially one-shotting 2 characters if we hit the full payoff of, like, 20 stacks? Or right? So we do have a nice overall mechanic as well, or a nice kind of, basically, if the target that we choose is defeated, it's just going to default to the weakest nest person, which is, I think, that's excellent. That's fantastic. Because most of the time, you're never really going to take those remaining stacks and just think like, man, I really wish I switched to their tank. I mean, it's possible. It would maybe be nice to choose, but I don't think CG really wants to offer those types of... They don't want to like pause an ability midway and like, hey, who do you want now? Like, right, we're never really going to be doing that. Yeah, I love this. I hope this does really solid damage. We haven't really had an ability like this pretty much ever. Like, we've had flavors, again, like Droideka, kind of like Rolo, but this feels like, hopefully, as long as the damage is good, which, keep in mind right now, we don't know what the ratios on are like, we don't know what the kit math is like. I assume it'll scale with offense, so hopefully we can build around it and try to make something juicier, but we have no way to know, so I don't know if we just go in with our hopes and dreams and assumptions of what the best possible result might be, but it's not hard to imagine a scenario where you get this built around correctly, you hit the 20 stack, and you could potentially delete, you know, a character and a half to 2 characters. And that, assuming that delivers on the power fantasy of that, I really enjoy it. It's almost like a combo team. I'm gonna say 10 out of 10. Assuming... Like, the fact that we get the target of our choice is really what sells me on this ability. If it was possible to get locked on a tank and then you had to, like, overkill the tank and then pick up the weakest person is one thing, but... Like, I want to call this anti-overkill, but I don't even think that's true, right? Because it's not anti-overkill. Like, Padme's courage has anti-overkill, because if you were going to kill somebody, you keep those extra courage stacks. And yeah, this gets you thinking about team building differently, right? Of like, especially if you're bringing this team on offense, it's like, okay, how can we like rack this up? And again, hopefully, assuming that we have like really good value, because I don't know, like, do they balance the ability around assuming that you get like 8 to 10, and like if you hit 20 you're insane, or do they balance this around 20 is the real payoff and anything less is like respectable damage? It's hard to predict. But yeah, overall, I love this. Feels like a unique character. I mean, the design has existed in other games, but I'm really, really happy to see this in Galaxy of Heroes. It's a very simple thing when you think about it. It's just like, okay, you pop this, you're recording for a turn, and then, you know, beat the crap out of the enemy for one turn and break the rewards, right? It just reinforces what you want to be doing anyway, so I enjoy it. And again, think about this in context of Canderous with the AoE, with the AoE dots especially. Canderous AoE, assuming that they all take a turn, which, you know, tanks might be slow or whatever, but like Canderous AoE right there is representing like 10 stacks, right? 5 for the physical damage he does, 5 more dots, and then, you know, Canderous will be getting turn meter, which, speaking of turn meter, we're about to be getting to more in a second here. I don't think it'll be that hard to reach 20, depending on the team that you build. If you're trying to be like responsible and you go like double tank line, maybe plus like Queel, it might be a little bit of a struggle, especially because at this point in time, Beskar Mando isn't going to be contributing to that himself. I do not think I see this kit functioning without Canderous, right? Canderous just seems like he's doing so much for this team. Alright, we do have to address the elephant in the room. This is... I felt almost nervous at first when I looked at this, because I was like, alright, scoundrel leader time, this is really important. What are we looking at here? And it's like 2.5 lines of text. At first I was just like, oh no. Oh god. But This is a very straightforward lead, and I think it's doing some pretty alright things, actually. So we have just straight up 5% health, 5% protection, 5% offense. It's not a bad stat line, right? It's basically 25% offense. Like, okay, let's put this in context of CLS lead. I think it'll be a fun way to think about this. I don't know that Beskar Mando will necessarily rob Han, Chewie, Chupio from CLS. Although, by the way, there's actually some really good, like, if the Whistling Bird synergy works really well, like, that's entirely possible. But, you know, I think it's kind of CLS lead adjacent here. We have 15% offense and I believe 50% defense on CLS lead versus 25% here. 25% assuming, of course, that you go for the full 5 scoundrel team, which luckily this doesn't actually force you into doing. I think especially looking at Gideon, there were some lines that were just like CG is just actively dictating like roles now, which is kind of weird. Yeah, so we have like 50% offense, 50% defense on CLS versus 25% health protection offense here. I see them as very similar. And then we have this. And I feel like some people are going to hate this at first. And I think I respect this. So, not to over talk about CLS here. So, but again, I think this is where we can put the tightest comparison based on something that we've already had and played with a lot, right? And potentially even with characters that Beskar Mando might be interested in. So CLS gets you 5% turn meter whenever an enemy resists an effect, which is really awkward, right? Because Rebels have a lot of potency. If you're running 3PO, your Rebels have more potency than you think you do. On top of Chupio steals potency and puts potency in their kit. So like that's like more often than not, unless the enemy is giving themselves tenacity of some sort, you're getting like 5% turn meter, maybe 15% of the time per attempt. This is just 2% unconditional when an enemy takes damage. This includes dot damage. This includes, I can only assume, because I don't see why it wouldn't, expose damage. This would count Chewie's unique. This counts Han double taps. This counts Canderous AoE. This counts any AoE. This counts Nest. There's a lot of things that this counts, right? So 2% is small. Yes. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with you. But CLS, for example, can already TM train like a champ. And we're looking at way less conditionality for, you know, 40%. I'm not going to disagree with you there. But a whole lot more access to it. Let's just put it into context, right? You stick Han, Chewie, Chupio in this team. That's immediate, just out of the box, 8% team turn meter. 10% actually. I'm underballing here because Chewie unique is already putting you at 10%. Okay. You put 3PO in that mix. Okay, you're probably hitting, let's say, maybe 2 out of 3 exposes. You're technically doing 4 attempts, but you're not going to be hitting that last one anyway. So let's say 2. That's already putting you up to 14% turn meter. With room for 16. And set up for another 18 on top of everything else happening. This is honestly, like, I've soapboxed on this a little bit, but I just want to come appreciate for a second here. This isn't quite as insane as Wedge, but I am gonna. Because, you know, there are some allegories here. So Wedge is giving you 10% turn meter for critical hit. This is, of course, only 2%. But the good news here is it's not tied to Wedge. Right. I guess the one downside here is Chupio isn't a scoundrel. This is one thing I always keep on forgetting. You would think you might be. I guess you put a droid in your back and suddenly you're just feeling a little bit more lawful. But yeah, I mean, all in all, I think this 2% can go a long way here. I feel fairly nice about it. And then I actually have rating this, I say I feel, it isn't like an insane lead. It's actually a fairly, right, like we have no initial speed mechanic aside from if we decide to give ourselves opening TM. I still feel fairly okay about this, actually. I think 8 out of 10. And of course, I didn't even talk about the fact of what is even happening right now. Game? I'm just gonna call it Canderous Bugged, as if it's if Canderous Bugged is basically the Canderous Journey version. I mean, we kind of have a situation kind of like GG301, where the turn meter begets the turn meter, where the more you feed Canderous Bugged unique, the more the lead will activate anyway, which means more TM to everybody. And yeah, you're so glad you gear 13 Canderous now. I don't know if Canderous will be as insane without the TM bug. He will still have opportunities, but the bug is really what's propelling him into scare territory for me at the very least. So yeah, I mean, the lead in itself I don't think is insane, but it gives you options. And I think some of those options are potentially fairly compelling. Now, are you going to want to take Han Chui away from CLS? But, like, even think about it this way. Nest was already, like, Fast Nest. I feel like we haven't really had a whole lot of reasons to see her lately. But Fast Nest is removing enemy team TM and also now just 10% TM to your team. That's extremely hard to be mad about, right? Yeah, it's a perfectly fine lead. It's not insane. I was honestly almost hoping for more of like a rally style lead like we've been getting lately. You know, something that could maybe help IG-11 do some more taunting by himself. But then again, the way that they tend to write rallies and IG-11 not being a taunt or a tank means he probably wouldn't be taunting anyway. So it's weird. Instead of Canderous getting TM from dot enemies taking damage from attacks, it's damage from any source. Yeah. But it still has to be dot enemies, right? Right, Promethean. It's not just any debuffs. I'm pretty sure it still has to be dots. I'm pretty sure on that. Alright. I actually haven't read this unique that much, so this will be the hot reacts for the day. Okay. 40% tenacity is kind of adorable, but it does mean that you 40% tenacity depending on what his base is. So CG does this thing sometimes where they'll give you a stat in your kit and then just completely, horrifically rob you of it in your base kit. So like, where are we? Okay, yeah. Luke has 40% potency. I think he got a little bit in his finisher now. Yeah, but back when he was gear 12, I'm pretty sure Luke's base potency was like 10%. I just want to check to confirm. I oversold it a little bit. Until you got the multi-tool, I assume, it was 1%. That is peak CG. This is what I used to know them for. Is they'll like give you something in your kit, like, okay, yeah, respectable, and then just completely tank you everywhere else. Yeah, G2 CLS had 1%. Absolutely. Like MM speed, absolutely. Good recent example. It's like, oh yeah, man, she's got plus 50 speed in her unique. That's insane. Base 110 at gear 13. Like, yeah, good luck. You think it might change your Baby Yoda rating? It will. Yes, it will. Yeah, I mean, 40% tenacity helps, assuming, let's say he has like 30% tenacity. That's not bad. That gives you extra reach. I don't hate that. If he has even higher, more power to it. And then like we mentioned earlier that the Team Ruble has a potency check. 40% potency baseline helps a lot. Lead isn't really affecting it at all, but yeah, that should help the consistency. Unfortunately, the TM removal will still have 50% RNG, which I hate 50% RNG. I wish it wasn't a part of the game. And I would always prefer to see it not have to be a factor where possible. And then the meat and potatoes here. First time a Scoundrel ally falls below 75% health, he dispels all debuffs on himself. Very nice touch. I mean, he can't be ability blocks, but pretty much anything aside from fear should be fair game on him here. Gets a stack of Whistling Birds, which... Can he actually be capturing Whistling Birds outside of stance? That's my one curiosity here. It sounded like we go into discipline setup and then the Whistling Birds start racking up, but if you could happen to like pick one up on the side here, that doesn't sound too bad, right? Yeah, it's hard to say. And I guess they do mention like Whistling Birds resets on revive, and Scoundrels do have a fair amount of reviving going on, so small detail, but good to know. And yes. Takes the bonus turn. Important to note that's a bonus turn, not 100% turn meter, so that can't be messed with. Even though he predispels anyway, so I guess 100% turn meter actually wouldn't be any difference. And the cooldown of Wonder of the Force is reset. So we've got weird flavors of like GL Ray here, kind of floating around the entire kit now in general. It's actually kind of funny. I thought that GL Ray was going to be like a pretty unique design, and now we're kind of just like... I almost like this more than GL Ray. If yours somewhere for one of the Force. It's hard to say. I do like that we can choose though. It's actually really cool. If we can, I think Ray's lead has to be the closest comparison to this, right? Because it's basically, I mean, this is actually a more forgiving threshold too. This is 75% versus Ray's 50. But I like that we can choose. I do suddenly kind of appreciate. Again, I don't think it had to be the same ability, but it is like, this is suddenly like there's potential for this to go off 5 times over the course of a match if you're starting to lose, and like that, I mean, no, I actually still respect this. It's like if we look at this in the context of someone being focused down, then suddenly this protection equalized in 20% sounds really nice, right? Like they're not going to be healed still, but it should be an effective patch up. All right, I think as a reactive tool, I think we can rewrite this now in context of the unique. I probably should have read it before we started, but I will. This came in hot. I wonder if there's gonna be situations though where you'll go into discipline setup, your unique will trigger, and then you just don't have the Whistling Birds, which I guess is actually kind of interesting, right? That actually means that like if Mando gets posted on defense, you have counterplay, and it's pure gameplay counterplay. Even it's not like you have to bring a specific character to counter. It's just like you play a specific way and you can cut his nuke buildup, call it whatever you will. You can cut that short. I like that actually. I mean, this being a multicast, I think puts it at a 10 out of 10. So, some small interactions that I've noticed playing around with damage immunity and, like, you know, Scoundrel Ray. I played last TB. I guess there's a couple of small things. So, let's say you have a taunting L3, right? You will, if you give this to said taunting L3, she will become unkillable, yes. But I'm pretty positive that L3 will not cleanse her team beyond that point. Which is like a really small penalty, right, for having an unkillable tank unless she gets dispelled. Which, by the way, I think L3 Watt might be on the menu. L3 Watt, if you hit the damage and vulnerability while she saw the tank piece, could happen. It was just like a permanent lockdown. But like, it's not like when she becomes targeted, she has to take damage from an attack, right? You can see here. Right. So a little bit unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, very, very small interaction overall. I don't think it's that bad. It's just a small detail worth noting. But yeah, Watt does sound... Man, it's so hard to price Watt potentially being used places now. Because Watt just wants to be everywhere. But I do think Watt could have some real fun in this team. Especially with someone who can just easily self-cleanse like L3. Like, yeah, we give her tenacity up with the special here. But I don't think it's really... Like, the point isn't the point, right? The point is Watt tank tech on a self-cleanser who... Yeah, it's just gonna be chilling. Yeah, Flare. Kendra's bug absolutely online. This feels like it was written for Kendra's bug almost. You're whelmed by this kit. My excitement for this is gonna be based entirely on the nuke and how nukey it is. If we're picking off 1 to 2 characters with this, like 1 to 2 fresh, like not chipped away at characters, I think this is a pretty solid team. So, I guess to put this into context, actually, let me finish this up and then I'll give my closing thoughts because I think it will help. And also, like, hey, worth mentioning, like, GAC offense, any sort of protection restore, we'll always gladly see this. So, whatever. We'll just... It's fun. Yeah. Repeatable protection, dispel. You kind of have to get beat up to really benefit from it, so there'll be matchups sometimes where you're winning and you're doing fine, and you kind of wish that you weren't. Man, this kid is like too cramped. This kid is too short almost. It's like really hard to fit text together. Alright. So, gave a little bit of context at the start here. I didn't rate this, but I think it's fine. I mean, this is literally a button to do nothing. So, like, the rating for this just applies to that. Whatever. My gripe with Scoundrels, pretty much this past year, but just kind of my feeling on them in general, it's been 2 things. They don't have a lead that's great. And then Scoundrels just don't really have a game plan. They aren't proactive, and B, they for the most part don't really do anything beyond just kind of try to outlast you. And the way that Galaxy of Heroes has evolved, I think it's incredibly unrealistic to expect to outlast most teams now, unless we're in like a GAC situation where your opponent is just gassed and they're running down to older teams that can't really break through that. But otherwise, for the most part, like, we've got more, like, Nihilus was maybe the beginning of it, but we've got a lot of tools to just siege engine the team out now. That, you know, there was a point in time where that Kira Vandor double tank team was doing alright, but I think we're kind of past that now. And so all this is to say, I think my hope is, I'm putting a lot of hopes in on Swift Takedown here, because this will suddenly give the faction a win condition, basically. They're still not necessarily coming at you fast out of the gate unless you specifically give them super fast Nest, which I think could... Nest, I think, could very... This could signal the end of Nest solo, which I would be sad about. But I think Nest could be incredibly happy to be here. It gives... I would say this team is almost a little bit too reliant. Like, for this lead to really feel like a modern lead, which gives you either speed or pre-turn meter, typically speed, you would have to draft at least Han, and that's... I don't think this kit necessarily earns you taking Han away from CLS. I think we'd rather have this as a new team alongside CLS, as I still think one of the best non-Galactic Legends teams in the game right now. I don't think this is really going to change that, although you could probably have some real fun doing Rebel Scoundrels with this setup. It's a little bit unfortunate that, you know, Chupio isn't a scoundrel. A little bit of a missed opportunity there, but, yeah, what are you going to do? But yeah, I think I'm feeling really solid on this character. Again, kind of really need to hope that this swift takedown is going to feel really nice. And again, I do want to point out here that with the unique giving a bonus turn, if we're mainly recording Whistling Birds while we're waiting, it's entirely possible that you'll just hit this button and then like 2 turns later you'll have like 3 stack, and well, I guess it's like 5 stack minimum, right? Yeah, 1 for each enemy. Like you'll have like 8 stack and it'll just end abruptly and you just don't get the payoff. And that'll feel bad, but again, I think it's healthy for that to be in the game, especially if you're playing against it. If this was just like a weird like timeout race where suddenly like you post Beskar Mando on defense and if you don't race him out on time then you just lose a character or two, and you know, like RAP or offense banners, I feel like that would feel kind of bad. So it is cool to me that we can kind of prevent it if we need to. But overall, the basic is kind of a nothing burger. It's just good because of Canderous Bug, and if Canderous Bug isn't good, then I think it's a pretty bad basic actually, unless the damage numbers are good. But we can't really rate this based on damage numbers that we don't know. So let's see. I feel like we have to give like 2 ratings. I would say I'm feeling 9 out of 10 if the nuke is good. Oh, we didn't actually finish rating the unique, but whatever. I'll go ahead in a second. If the nuke is fine, I maybe lean more towards like a 10 out of 10. There's still value to be had here. This unique is still like really unique. Like there's some real power in this kit that we kind of just don't really see a whole lot in Galaxy Heroes. Pretty much this is, we need the nuke to be good because the nuke is how the team will win essentially. Otherwise you're just kind of still sitting there, just kind of like slowly waiting to be killed off. At least if you're posting on defense. If you're on offense, whatever. Grind out teams could still effectively work, but it really just depends on what you're seeing on offense. I mean, you know, it's possible matchup table wise. Like Whistling Birds could trade favorably into like Padme because the problem is Swift takedown, I almost kind of wish was fully true damage instead of physical damage to everyone first. But that being said, it's like a courage bomb almost, right? It's like doing Anakin AoE with a courage bomb. It's like, yes, you'll potentially have like, you know, GK, damage immunity pop, and if 3PO's on the team, they'll get extra protection as well for that matchup. But like, you could probably still reach out and like delete Padme or Anakin, or I mean, in a perfect world, hopefully both. Although you might be hitting 3PO instead there, depending on who you target. Probably not Ahsoka unless it's like a low relic Ahsoka. Her unique tends to carry her health pool enough that I don't think she would be the next weakest. But like, yeah, you know, I think I would be really curious on what this team's matchup table ends up being. And again, it really depends on if the nuke is good. I might even say 10 if the nuke is good. Like, if we can pick up a character and a half, that is just such a huge momentum swing. And I think this is gonna be, I'm just gonna keep on waking up each day. I guess I don't wake up late anymore. I'm gonna be nervous whenever patch notes hits or any sort of news feed hits the news and data mines our server that like CG finally wised up, because I feel like without Canderous it's gonna be a little bit harder to hit that 20 bird mark. But hey, I mean, if it's not working as intended, it should probably be fixed, or maybe it just means that Canderous should be adjusted. I mean, Canderous has been bugged with what should be a crazy tool for this long, and the character is still not used. So like, fixing him for the sake of, I prefer not to see. And then, I mean, this is like a really, really nice, unique, that has potential to screw you over. It's really hard to say. I don't know if I would go so far as to say like it'll auto-lose you, but if you miss your first whistling birds, it's gonna take a bit to cycle back around to it, right? It is a 4-turn cooldown. But yeah, I mean, overall we have two really solid tools. A unique that's like, you know, fairly vanilla, but I think it's very straightforward, and being straightforward isn't necessarily a sin, right? It's not terrible. It's just, the rules are fairly straightforward and has some demands for you team building wise if you want to be a proactive team. And you're still always going to get outsped by teams with natural speed sources for the most part. Or at the very least, you're going to have to give Nest like insane speed investment, or you're going to have to give them Han and Chewie, which doesn't feel great either, right? We're talking about IG-11 applying dots. I don't know. Everyone forgets Nest is on the levels of BB-8 base speed. Yeah, but BB-8 has passive TM game beyond that, which is the problem. All right, like let's just go to it this way, right? Pyatt, negative enemy speed for light side anyway, is basically plus speed. Django, plus 30 speed. The classic. Mandalorian is like a weird like plus 20 hybrid. Looking at GL, I mean whatever, GLs are the latest thing. Like, you know, plus 40, plus 30, plus 30. Rex gives you 20% starting speed on top of starting TM as well. JTR typically looking at 16 to 24% opening speed. CLS, you have his conditional 5% TM gain, but you know, with 2PO, with 3PO now, a lot of chances to potentially get that. You're usually getting like 5 to 10 to 15, so you know, plenty to work with there. Vader doesn't really I mean, Vader lead wasn't really updated, right? It was just Vader was updated, and so the lead became usable. Not really. Luke is still one of the slower leads we've had lately, but kind of for good reason, is because once you hit it, if you're not using a Galactic Legend, the effect is kind of insane. Palpatine, TM train, not really initial speed. Crew, 30 speed. Grievous doesn't really have initial, but it does have crazy TM support that kind of makes... It is slightly more conditional, but the conditionality is like fairly easy for this team to hit, so you're TM training pretty hard. And you're TM training for like... I mean, if you're bringing Newt, you look... Or you make Beskar Mando's lead look like nothing in comparison, for the most part. I mean, DR, no actual starting speed, but ramps up speed after the fact. Bosk, more of a defensive option. I mean, him being in the bounty hunter pool, his is more just like a reactive tool for more of a slugfest fight. GMI reactive TM, not really used. She's still fairly slow. Or like, she doesn't really do anything herself. Nice Sisters, both 30 speed, 40 speed, well, 30, 35, 40, depending on what you're hitting. Speed lead. So, like, yeah. All this is to say, like, is Nest fast? Yes. No question. But, like, Nest used to be, like, the fastest gun in the West, right? And she kind of isn't anymore. And on top of not being the fastest gun in the West anymore, those new fast guns also just have speed to start, right? Imp Troopers. Nest is 179. What's Pyatt? 179. 179 plus 20. Assuming, you know, Veer's lead, for example. So it gets weird, right? Is like, again, you're kind of priced into using Han, and that's a big price to ask if you want like the true initial TM control. So, it's hard to say. It's hard to... We really just need to see what the payoff is to see, like how badly are we coveting this? I think, for the most part, you're not going to try to really care about that. You'll probably use it on offense in a situation where you know it's fairly safe. Again, you could try... Did I say Pyatt? It's Pyatt. I don't know. Don't worry about it. It's not the point. First squad you're going to try. So, I mean... God, I actually have Scoundrels. This is awkward. Why do I have this? It's a loaded question for me because the one that I would want to try is one that I can't run. Okay, this is Beskar Mando. Just, you're not going to be using the Mandalorian with Mando anyway, so don't worry about it. Nest, I feel like, is a shoo-in. It's all about intent, right? If you're trying to post this team on defense, I think you're suddenly challenged into a lot more concerns than otherwise. I think for offense, you could probably have some degree of freedom here. Big question, actually. I was really hoping that Nest might daze them before dealing damage, because that would actually count for Canderous Bug. Unlucky. I mean, lazy answer for offense would probably be this. It's fine. Vander, for the most part, isn't going to be punished that badly. Right? Like... I don't... Like, CG tried to argue that you could, like, use them as... Like, you could use them with Darkside Bounty Hunters or whatever. I don't know that I see that, really. I mean, you're definitely not going to be using him with Mandalorian. I mean, maybe they see him as, like, a flex for Bounty Hunter teams, which I could maybe see. But... the bounty hunters that I know right now are trying to, like, they're like a smash and grab team almost. They're basically just trying to hit Mandalorian's payout as soon as possible, pick up the disintegrate, and then just mop up. It isn't even debuffed enemies, it's when an enemy is damaged. I was waiting for you to show up because I knew that you would be able to remind me what it actually was. Okay. So then, yeah, Nest is just... That's just 10% team turn meter, and then I guess 40% Canderous turn meter, so 50% Canderous turn meter. So yes, Canderous gets to play here. I guess I should be grateful, I guess, to the Riven event for putting me in this position to even consider this. Considering the detonators aren't even in that high of demand right now. Like, there's room to consider this. Although again, I am not. Yeah, I'm not gonna take this plunge here. I need to see some proof first. But yeah, I mean, this feels okay. Like, you don't really want to pull L3. And I almost honestly don't even want to pull Nests. Wait. Hold up. I feel ashamed not even stopping to consider. We have budget nests, and we have a budget nest. This actually sucks to consider. I actually hate that I'm even, like, talking about this, because she just got done for another team. But, like, I guess if you want your thematics. How fast is Kara? Kara's like 4 slower, right? No, she's 2 slower. She's 177 instead of 179. If you go speed Demon Kara, she would reduce enemy TM, give your team 10 TM, give your team 40 TM, or give Canderous 40 TM. She would do fine here. She's not really a tank, which I guess she doesn't really need to be. I would say probably flex. Or you could run both and just... That would be funny, I guess. What becomes of Queel? Look, I'm not trying to be a hater here, but I don't buy the hype on these characters at all. I'm probably going to go into the event trying to bare minimum this out. I'm not trying to be a hater here. I know that there's people are talking about like some flavor of dispel all debuff and then inflict damage over time that way. I'm gonna need to see some footage proof of IG-11 really feeling like he earns a whole lot of... that he earns this slot. Because he doesn't even pre-taunt unless you bring Queel. He doesn't have a retaunt function. He has to retaunt manually. And it's not hard for tanks to get dispelled these days. I like to keep on bringing back up Shore Trooper as an example of like, Shore Trooper is an old tank now. Shore Trooper is like outdated. He's fine. Like, he's usable. But he's usable because we have clauses like this. Right? When he loses a buff, taunt, damage immunity, reduce the cooldown of the taunt back down by 1. Ah, it's coming back up sooner. Or, for example, I mean, L3 is a bad example because she also just has a retaunt mechanic, but the whole idea of whenever another, or a scoundrel in this case, but you know, whenever another ally takes damage, she gains turn meter. That helps her get back to taunting sooner. We go over to IG-11 and like, the dude is fast, yes, but I just like my tanks to be... I'm in the tank tag looking for IG-11. Like, yeah. Good luck. Right, it's like 3-turn cooldown. No real mechanics to help him get back to it sooner. And once you've done that... I don't know. And like, I wish the taunt was tied to the retribution as well. It's weird, man, right? I wish that there was just some other way. I was really hoping that there would be like some synergetic rally to give you some condition to get IG-11 to taunt more, right? Because like, yes, if you had like IG-11 taunting and then retributing, this would be 2 attacks. Wouldn't be bad. Right. Yeah, target minion weakest enemy. I mean, how long is the pre-taunt on Queel? Is it in here? Or is it in IG? I forget. Oh, it might be in IG as a condition for if Queel's presence. Yeah, IG-11. Okay, so it's a 2-turn pre-taunt. So like, you could theoretically just hope that the taunt lasts and just pop the retribution. Still, the concern is a concern for me. And like in under Beskar Mando lead, you would want to be popping the AoE more often than not because, you know, it's team turn meter, it's AoE tenacity down. I don't think that's a particularly surprising statement to make. But yeah, I mean, also a big thing here that I want to point out, which, like, as we kind of pointed out at the start of this, Beskar Mando doesn't use a flamethrower, doesn't have the shock component at all. I guess the old Mandalorian had, like, uses like the shock prod in his kit. But we're kind of like, if this was going to be using like Wheel IG, it's kind of expecting some like potential stun or not even stun, but like shock or burn synergy to kind of make some of this make sense. It kind of doesn't. Not that it used to be. I'm kind of fine with it for what it is, but just like, yeah. And like, it's also really weird when you think about it of like, you know, I Have Spoken isn't a bad button, right? But Scoundrel Allies gain 25% turn meter. You're kind of just shortening the window for Beskar Mando to collect whistling, whatever you want to call them. One thing I actually do want to check real quick, because this would be a nice pickup. I don't remember if L3 gets counterattacks on first. Self-mod? 50% counter chance, so not reliable. L3 would help you stack up Whistling Birds as long as she's taunting, which would actually be quite nice. Yeah, I mean, going back to the squad, right? Let's say Kara or Nest. I'll just put Nest in because she's right there. I feel like this last spot would either be Vandor or Watt. I don't know if Watt... I mean, your ability or willingness to put Watt in here really depends on, like, what are you planning to use to fight GLs? Like, what's your Raider doing these days? A whole lot of other questions that, like, I don't know if Watt necessarily gets to be here. But, like, it depends really on what this team is able to hunt. Like... I don't know, I don't think this... Unless this Whistling Bird Nuke is crazy, I don't think, like, this team is going to be able to go, like, Sith Eternal Emperor hunting. Unless it just so happens that you can ignore Deceived and, like, just try to snipe Sith Eternal Emperor. That would have to be a ridiculous nuke, though, to be able to pull that off. I highly doubt that. Jetpack Mando version 3 confirms. I mean, that's kind of the question. I feel like it kind of has to be confirmed. We'll probably just see like a Journey Continues, just like a JKL style event for like full-blown floaty, burny, shocky season 2 potentially related stuff E. No spoilers E. Kara becomes attacker under a Scoundrel, no longer Sibling Thunder from L3. I would prefer Kara to be tanking though. This team does not really need more damage here, right? I don't even, like, I could be completely wrong here, but I don't think her damage is that great as a Scoundrel. But yeah, I mean, I think if you look at this overall, Watt in this team, you got L3 Watt, which I still really love as a power combo. I think tank or weapon tech onto Canderous makes a lot of sense here. I don't think you would give it to Beskar Mando. I think that would just... Right? You don't want the collection period to be too short. And Canderous... The weapon tech is almost kind of a joke. But yes, we'll help him... We'll help him do what he's gonna do. Better under Kara Clash's words? Kira Kara? I'm not following. You're saying Kara's better under Kira lead, or... for her to be an attacker purely with Kara. Yeah, I don't know. I think she could be fine here. I don't know if I would want to do that to mess with my Mon Mothma. But also, it would put me in a weird spot where I would have to use Nest or Kara, and I don't really want to give up either. But you can't really... I mean, what's the scoundrel list, right? Let's stroll on in here to the filters. So, I mean... it's possible IG just becomes your high-speed AoE option. Jago actually does have enough speed. I don't think you would take him from bounty hunters, though. I mean... that's not terrible, but it wouldn't be Newt lead. Alright, this is basically 6 damage procs. This is 12% Team Terminator with his Zeta. Unfortunately, you don't grant profit to Scoundrels either, so... bit tragic, but like, Newt's kind of in that speed bracket. Nest still seems kind of like the most attractive option there. Yeah, this wouldn't really count unless... yeah, unfortunately, Nude Zeta is only for Separatist allies dealing damage. You can't shoehorn him in and have, like, Scandal dealing double damage for debuffs. Would be absolutely broken if you could. Like, would absolutely... Zam Thermal. If Zam placing Thermals would have synergy potential with Newt, then I would say, like, you could potentially rake both. But... God, can you imagine if Canderous Bug actually worked with Nude Zeta? He would literally just be looping 100%. Would actually just be busted. With our own TM game? I don't think it's Sam. Yeah, I mean, IG at this point could just be like argued as, I mean, what's his full gear? Maybe more than you would feel like spending. But I mean, 177 speed if you wanted to leave Nest and Kara flexible. As a speed leader, you could do worse. Yeah, I still feel like Nest feels like the slam dunk winner. Nest or Kara both. I mean, Nest is reducing by... what, 20% per meter? Kara is reducing by 50%? Yeah. But IG-11 could be acceptable just for like creating 10% per meter for your team, but again, I want to emphasize, I mean, deal physical damage to enemies with damage over time or shock. Is there any way we can manufacture that? Not really. Which is a shame. Like, most of the value of that ability, I feel like, would be after Canderous had gone once then. You wouldn't really want to open up with it. Or, like, if you do, you're getting 10% instead of 20%. I guess, like, against stuff like Nihilus, where you start off debuffed. you might pick up the health down, and then dispel it, and then get one extra hit. Not really. Not really worth mentioning. And yeah, like, the whole clause of, like, whenever another droid or ally, or scoundrel ally attacks during an enemy turn, like, doesn't... Yeah, I just feel like most of this doesn't really make sense in context of... Yeah, we're just not really... There's just not a whole lot of kit synergy here. Maybe the next Mando will make more sense, but, like, the whole Queel, IG... Kara kind of makes more sense now for scoundrels. I think has some value, but the rest of it's hard to say. Yeah, I think we said most of what there is for the most part. If only Galactic Challenge was active right now. I don't think the next one is on yet, right? Wait, it's not even listed. Wait, are we not on the double Galactic Challenge schedule yet? I mean, we're on the new system, but... Is Kara going with the Beskar Mando mean finally gear up K2 for Mothma? I'm gonna give you a visual answer. I'm a visual learner myself, so I don't know if this will be useful for you, but I wish I knew how to edit scripts for web pages. How do I do this? There we go. That's my thoughts. Double GC doesn't start until next week. Okay, fair enough. That's a little bit of a shame. I was hoping that we would get more slices more quickly. Yeah, I mean, I would rather gear IG-11. I mean, IG-11 costs less than K2. And is like... I don't know. Clash knows his stuff, but I just... have my own opinions sometimes, and I don't know if my opinions and his line up. I feel like Clash saw the gains 1% max protection whatever he takes damage, and like the rest was just he decided that K2 was good and made it work. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. Alright, I think that's most of what we've had to say for this kit. Overall, I'm excited. I don't share people's optimism that the drop rate is going to be the same as a Galactic Chase. I don't. For a farm event that's lasting 3 weeks, I feel like it'll be 1% instead of 4% or something like that. The idea that they would just release these characters and it's just like, oh yeah, you never have to farm them from hard nodes ever again. It's like, that's cute. I don't know. If it's true, I will gladly take that. I hope it's true. I don't have any hopes or expectations for that to be true. Whatever happens, happens. I'm gonna assume that we're not gonna be in the journey within 2 to 3 weeks. I assume it'll take a little bit more time. But yeah, I mean, all told, cool kit. I think has me quite interested. I think it does a lot of what the scoundrels need, assuming that this nuke is good, which I hope it is. But otherwise, you know, there's still some merit to the kit. I mean, address plug and play flexibility. I think there might not be much though, right? I'm pretty sure like the damage immunity can only go on scoundrels. So like you could maybe use them in like a CLS team or like any team where scoundrels were kind of hanging out already. But other than that, you're not really, right? You're not really going insane here. I don't know. Maybe it's entirely possible that there's actually some interest in like IG-11, Ray, Queel, plus like L3 or something, 5th, maybe Vandor. Right, that kind of gives Ray some interesting complexity if you're going like the Scoundrel route. Haven't really mentioned that. It's interesting, but I think it just depends on a few factors, right? Like, Ray is giving the team crit immunity, so depending on how weak or strong your team is, like if your team is like really bulked out, the crit immunity, depending on the strength of the Vader as well, is a very important thing. Like this 75% health might actually not just hit that much early on. Like if you were like interrupting bonus turns every time Vader hit somebody, it would be funny and like potentially interesting, although you wouldn't really get whistling birds that much. I don't know, it's just weird. And like if you go too hard on like, if you go like a comp that feels like a good Ray team, I don't think you rack up that many whistling birds either. Right, like Ray, I mean, what's the condition even for whistling bird? Is it Scoundrel only? Yeah, he gains 1 stack whenever an enemy takes damage, so that part is like plug and play friendly-ish, but unless you could try something cutesy, like you have Beskar Mando faster than Finn plus Poe, that actually could be like really, really cool if he's fast enough to be able to pull that off. Because Finn plus Poe will get you fairly close to 20%. Like that Finn grenade is getting you like 14, I think. That actually might get you straight to it. Because the Finn grenade, like the AoE alone components, is 5 plus 5 more on the main target. Then you have Ray assist, Poe assist, Finn assists, and they should all be inspired at that point. Which is, yeah, that's just max stack. Whistling Bird immediately. That's not bad. That's really not bad. And like that, in a Ray team on top of the other damage immunity, that could hit. Now granted, again, we're talking about like Scoundrel synergy. Maybe you would go like Ray, Finn, Poe, Beskar, Mando. But like if you do that, you're only going 1 tank. Which... it's been a while since we've had Ray teams like that. Yeah, I don't know. That sounds interesting. I could see an argument for that, but time will tell. Yeah, overall, solid character. Can't wait to get him pretty accessible. I think we'll all be getting him pretty soon, so enjoy. Hopefully his gear list isn't that bad. That's maybe the bigger thing we should be concerned about here. Only one we will find out. Yeah. Thank you all for stopping by. Hopefully this was enjoyable for you as it was for me, and we will be back. I guess we won't be back tomorrow. I assumed that this was happening tomorrow, so I guess tomorrow's kind of a day off. We'll be aiming to have the Phase 2 guide out by tomorrow morning for all of you going into Day 3, starting your Phase 2 with the Gas P2 mid-mission. Yeah, should be good. And other than that, I will see you all next time. Peace out. If you wanna, I don't think we'll do Buddha stream up just for like the SUWH.GG stats, but if you want to join my Discord, discord.io/theplaybook, we will be looking at all the good stuff there, checking his base speed, checking his offense, checking his ability ratios. Really, that's going to be the do or die for, is this nuke good or what? And yeah, guess we'll find out. Alright guys, thank you all for stopping by. Peace out.